Think of the people you interact with every day. Would you want to spend a day in a canoe with them? I'm Nathan Mercereau, and as a financial advisor with over 25 years of experience, I've learned that the quality of the people you spend time with is a lot more valuable than what can show up in a set of financial projections. And growing up in Canada, I discovered you can learn a lot about a person when you spend a day in a canoe with them. So I created this show where I interview people I find interesting and inspiring. I invite you to listen in and learn from their stories so you can create the life you want, one filled with wealth, wisdom, meaning, and purpose. I'm delighted today to spend time in the canoe with Steve Moeller. I met Steve well over 20 years ago, and Steve was an influential part of my life in the financial services industry. And so we connected, and at the time, Steve had a book that was so intriguing called Effortless Marketing for Financial Advisors. And he was talking about this concept called human happiness and the science of happiness. So here we are over 20 years later, and now the science of happiness is an ever-expanding topic. So many people are hungry for happiness. And in fact, Steve wrote a book called Endorphinomics, The Science of Human Flourishing. And Steve, welcome to Day in a Canoe. And so why is it that people are not happy?
Oh, good question. Actually, I think babies are generally happy. You know, most babies are. I think people pursue the wrong things oftentimes. They're not sure what will bring them happiness, and I think what brings us happiness does change over time too. But I think in our society, to a great extent, Nathan, that people are trained, particularly those that are more highly educated, that you have to put up with stress in order to make money, and then if you make enough money, you'll be happy. So I think there's sort of this cultural belief or myth, and actually, frankly, a lot of us, if you start off not having much money, it definitely being poor make you pretty unhappy. So it's a matter of, I think, when you get to a point where you're making enough money where you can support yourself, then just starting to focus on, well, then I've got the basis covered. How do I now enhance my quality of life? Because happiness is one element of a quality of life, but it's sort of it's a broader concept rather than happiness is generally considered in the moment, moment by moment experience, whereas quality of life is your nutrition, your health, your living situation. There's a lot of objective elements to quality of life, and then there's a subjective. And so once you get the objective sort of figured out, I think, and this is relevant to a lot of people that will probably be listening, as you evolve in your career, you oftentimes shift in terms of what's important to you, what you're aspiring to or trying to achieve, and always trying to chase happiness. It's just that I think the more we understand what it is, the more effective we're going to be in actually achieving it.
That makes sense. So when people start out, I'm sure they have the intention of doing things to be happy, but you brought up a critical point where people will pursue an objective, pursue a goal, and define that as their point of happiness. But when they actually arrived there, they don't find that happiness. So what is happening during that process, and why is that not fulfilling to them based upon your research and understanding of what motivates people?
That's actually fairly well studied. It's called miswanting. The formerly of a formal term. It's so common that people lock onto something, they pursue it, and then they get there and they go, it's not that great. It actually is a universal part of the way the brain works. Is that we're just not really very good at predicting how we might feel in the future under different circumstances. And I think a lot of times, Nathan, people are chasing something in order to get away from something else, maybe a childhood thing or something, or a lot of times, if for you think of retirement planning, most people go to a retirement planner or a financial planner, wealth manager, and a simple question: when can I retire? It kind of implies this whole constellation of other issues that they probably don't really like being there very much. So they're moving away from something they don't like, as opposed to something that's compelling and meaningful to them. And I think we talked briefly the other day about people they move away from pain, they move towards pleasure. But if your default mode is moving away from, well, let's put it this way: if you don't know what will make you happy, you're not clear on that, then you have a tendency to default to moving away from what makes you unhappy. Does that make sense? If you don't have something clear, I call it emotional lighthouse, your vision of what will really truly make you happy. It turns out that we're not very good at predicting, but we're very good at remembering. So what I've learned to do is help people connect to things in the past that have put them in positive states, and then think about, well, what would it be like if we got more of that in their life? And so that's kind of a simple way. It's just kind of like food. I don't know if I like it or not. I could what do you call it, miswanting on all kinds of different food until I tasted it, and then once I tasted it, I have a much better idea.
So let's unpack what you just mentioned about revisiting the past and some positive experiences and then reframing to look ahead. So for listeners, how do they do that? Like, what's a simple example, or how can they kind of use that methodology to reorient to something that they are more motivated to move toward?
Right. Well, a quick story. Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, or we call him Professor Mike, he developed the concept of flow, or named that. And I was having lunch with him one day, and I said, Professor Mike, I said, you have more experience. At that time, he had over 30 years of investigating and researching. He said, you have more experience of trying to understand what people are, what's going on when they're happy, and what makes them happy, and all the rest of that. And I said, what wisdom do you have for my book? I'm sorry, the book then. He said, oh, it's really simple. If you come home from work and you're kind of stressed and you play with your dog for, say, 30 minutes and really, de-stresses you and makes you very happy, well, then tomorrow come home and play with your dog for 40 minutes. And he said, it's just really simple. Just identify the things that in the past that put you in positive states and organize your life to do more of that. And then figure out those things that have put you in negative states and organize your life to do less of that. So it's actually a fairly simple formula. And one of the simple questions is, what lights you up and generates energy in your life? And people start to answer that. And you say, well, gosh, what would it be like if you did more of that more often? And what are the things that, bring you down and that you kind of, what's the right term? You dread having to do, right? You don't look forward to. Maybe we make a list of that. And like we always talk about delegating everything but the fun in business, right? So you can be in your area where you flourish, where you're more resourceful because you're in a positive state. So if it's drudgery, try and get someone else to do it who actually enjoys it. That's the goal. And that's true in all aspects of your life. People, the work you're doing, where you live, all those things do have an impact in your day-by-day experience and your overall assessment of your quality of life.
And without getting too technical, I know that you've done a lot of research into what happens in the brain. So, what's going
Yeah.
on as people are either experiencing negative things or pursuing positive things? What's the contrast there?
The big takeaway is that we have two types of emotions: positive emotions, which attract us to opportunities for resources and for personal growth and for information, new and better ways of doing things, but all about surviving and flourishing. Negative emotions, from what scientists believe, evolved to help us survive, not to flourish. So they're helping us avoid threats or overcome threats. So negative emotions, when you experience them, and it could be a negative thought, it could be somebody an experience, but it could be something external, it could be internal. But it's generally a threat. It could be like a psychological threat, or just a threat of have to do a test. I'm stressed. Okay. And when you experience that, automatically you cannot control it. And what happened, and it's subconscious, but what happens is your whole body chemistry changes. In the case of negative emotions, you have the distress response, and you have the stress hormones, cortisol and adrenaline, that flow into your blood system. And the blood runs away from your brain, your thinking brain up in here, and your intestines, and it goes out to your extremities to prepare you to fight or run away. So what it does in the process, Nathan, is it makes it pretty much impossible for people to think straight, because the blood is drained away from. We need blood to process or to use muscles or whatever, and so I learned that people, when they're in a negative state, they can't make good decisions, and they basically say, "I want to go home and think about it." And my joke is they go home and drink about it because they're stressed. So that's negative emotions, a whole set of hormones, neurotransmitters that occur, changes the body physically and changes the brain. When you experience positive emotions, it's much more subtle. But again, automatically and subconsciously, you can't control us. But if you put people in a positive state or something happens, there, you say something, maybe it's just simple like a compliment. Man, I love the way that you always are here diligently working, and you really care about the company, and that's meaningful to me. A compliment can it elevates them, it changes their body chemistry. Now you're going to have Serotonin is going to change. Serotonin is a little bit vague, but it's involved in all types of different moods. But more importantly, I think endorphins, which I kind of use as a metaphor for all of the natural occurring neurotransmitters. If you're focused on a goal and you're moving towards it, which is very positive, emotionally oriented, dopamine will be involved for that. And so you have these, but now instead of being ready to fight, what positive emotions do is they open your brain up. They basically, you only experience positive emotions, Nathan, when you're being signaled that it's safe, right? You're safe, you're secure, it's after the hunt, you've had the meal, you're around the fire, you're relaxing, you're looking at the stars. Now I'm dreaming. I'm not threatened anyway. And so and when people experience positive emotions, they're much more open to novel and unscripted behavior, new information, new relationships. And so and I was thinking about this call today, but when you're an advisor and you're helping people and you're trying to help them in areas they're not that familiar, say estate planning, wealth management, law, all these very, even medical issues, if they get confused, they'll shut down. And so it's really important that to help them to make good decisions, that we consciously put them in and put them in, that's not the right term, put them in, but help them to stay in a positive state so they don't get confused. Because confusion is it's one of the most common emotional states in professional services, I found out. Fortunately, curiosity and interest are two of the most common positive emotional states. So we can use curiosity and an interest oftentimes to attract people and get them open and interested, exploring more information, like to sit down and find out how that works. That's all positive emotional stuff.
And
And
so,
so totally different behavior, moving away from or moving towards.
absolutely. So as we all age, go through life cycles, is this something that we can re-engineer? Because sometimes, we might have a mindset, well, we're, kind of like we're predestined to be grumpy, so bring it on. Whereas other people might say, no, I want to carpe diem, seize the day, and experience life to the fullest every single day, regardless of the circumstances. What's your view on how we can, I guess, tap into what you're describing? Is it a theoretical thing, or is it something that can really be applied on a daily basis, regardless of what life stage we're in?
Very good question. That was some of the earlier research on positive psychology in the later part of the 20th century was about, can we actually change people's emotional state? Because once they found out that positive emotions, people were healthier, they were more creative, they were better employees, they are better problem solvers. There's all host of things that they're better citizens. Then you start saying, well, can we do this? Can we actually enhance it? Well, it turns out that if you look at your emotional state, about 50% is what they call a set point. It's set by your genetics. Some people are grumpier just by nature than other people. And some people, you and I are kind of like that. And a lot of people I like to hang out are maybe over too enthusiastic. But we definitely on the other end of there would be a spectrum of say grumpiness versus jubilant or some, whatever, jubilant, I'm not sure how to pronounce that word. But so that you can't change that 50%. But what's interesting, Nathan, is about 10% of our emotional state, this is at any particular moment in time, is determined by what's going on around us, the actual environment. But 40% of our emotional state is determined by our attitude, our opinions, our beliefs, and our values. And those you can change, although it's difficult. But one of the first things you can change is just believing that it's not just happiness, but positive emotional states in general are to be pursued. They're valuable, that they are meaningful. Excuse me. Basically they extend longevity, which is interesting. One of the things I learned was optimists live about 8 to 10 years longer than pessimists on average. So right there, it's like, get a new attitude. And that can be learned. Optimism and pessimism are learned from oftentimes your mother. In terms of a whole world view, as opposed to your just general state of grumpiness. But yeah, you can. But the main thing I think is committing to happiness and positivity and learning more about what it is and then organizing your life. And this is particularly true with people that are retiring or making a major life change. They can sort of reset and think through, but here's the thing. They shouldn't be projecting in the future, well, in your imagination, what would make you happy. They should be going in your past, what made you happy. Because here's the interesting thing, Nathan, our vision for the future, which we all have to have, or else there's no reason to live. We have to have something that's meaningful for us that gets us up in the morning, keeps us going. If we don't have that, we basically, we don't live. People commit suicide if they don't have vision. But the vision is based on the life experiences and the memories from the past. People that have amnesia, have their brains damaged through strokes or injuries, they don't have a vision either. So our memories are the raw material. So it makes perfect sense when you're trying to help people figure out what they want to do next, or we'll put them in positive states, is just go back to what food have you eaten in the past that you liked, and what food should we avoid? Well, right there, you start having a database. And I broke it down into the different areas of your life, like your work. I call it your personal powers, what you do for work, your passions, what your interests and areas of passion are, what your purpose is, and then positive people, positive places. Like when you go to Wyoming, so it's a different experience. It's just positive places will lift you up, right? And then the last one is actually economic sustainability. So if you're basically expressing your personal powers, doing things you're passionate about with positive people in positive places, and it's all sustainable, I call it the endorphin zone. But it's thoughtful. You're very intentional in terms of figuring out what works for you and then pursuing it. But what else do we have to do in life but pursue things, right? that are meaningful.
That is so helpful, Steve. And I know that for us at Planning Alternatives, we've really incorporated this whole belief system perspectives to plan for the future, to make sure that there are clear strategies based upon what our clients' aspirations are, what their needs are, the full spectrum of what's important to them. And in fact, as we've just worked on the rebranding of the firm, we came up with our motto, step into your best life. And that's really important for our clients to understand, so that they can experience what they envision as that ideal future based upon the science of happiness and based upon really focusing on what creates those endorphins and all those things that you were talking about from an expansive point of view. So, Steve, I want to thank you for the contribution that you've helped me work through over time in terms of differentiating amongst all the financial professionals out there, and really focusing on the value add and the aspirational goal-driven focus with our clients. And really appreciate your time today, and appreciate the work that you put into your book, Endorphinomics. And thanks for taking time to be on the Canoe today.
My pleasure. It was a lot of fun. We'll just do it again.
Thank you for listening and tuning in today in a Canoe. We're thrilled to have you as part of our community. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a review and share it with your friends and loved ones. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel or follow us on social media platforms by searching Day in a Canoe. We'll see you next time.